And if we go to the psalmist in Psalms 24:1, if you have your Bible. If not, it's referenced right here on the screen. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell in it. So first off, the premise is set in the beginning. It's clear. Man was created to work, and that work is to be the steward over all of that God has given us. That's everything. And then a fundamental principle of stewardship is God owns everything. We are simply managers and administrators acting on His behalf. That's everything. Y'all can write those down if you want to. I'll give you time, because we're going to get into some details here in a little bit. Stewardship. It expresses our obedience regarding the oversight of everything God has placed under our control. It's our obedience in regards to the oversight that God's placed in our control, which is all-encompassing. Stewardship is the commitment of oneself and possessions to God's service. If I go too fast, y'all can slow me down. Hey, can I borrow one of y'all's copies, brothers? Andrew's going to give it up. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. All right. And then here, recognizing, and the God's service recognize that we do not have the right of control over the property or ourselves. Everything that we have has been given to us by God, belongs to God, and we do not have just control over those things. They do belong to God. And that in Deuteronomy 8:17, we might say, "And thou sayest in thy heart, my power and the might of my hand hath gotten me this wealth." Well, that's not correct, because if you look at Deuteronomy 8:18, it counsels us to think otherwise. "But thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is He that giveth thee power to get wealth, that He may establish His covenant which He swore unto your fathers, as it is this day." So you got to remember the Lord your God, for He is who gives you the ability to produce wealth in any form. So in any form that you've got gain, God's allowed you to have that gain. And that's the principle of ownership. It's everything that we have been given, that we possess, belongs to God. Everybody got that? I might move a little fast, but not too fast. I'm open for questions at any point in time. You have them. We can answer any questions you have. So once you know the principle, the first principle there, that everything belongs to God, we need to understand the principle of responsibility. First off, we acknowledge ownership of everything we have belongs to God. That's the first principle. The second principle is the principle of responsibility. That I'm responsible for what God has entrusted me with. You're responsible for what God has entrusted you with. And this gets pretty in depth. I sat down the other day. I was probably sitting in a chair with my Bible for about 4 hours writing this out. Because it gets pretty in detail. Because we have a certain mindset we need to work on. So responsibility. Although God has given us all things richly to enjoy, nothing is ours. Nothing is ours. My children aren't mine. My wife isn't mine. My home isn't mine. My car isn't mine. Nothing that I have belongs to me. It belongs to God. It's borrowed. Nothing really belongs to us. God owns everything, and we're responsible for how we treat it and what we do with it. We're responsible for how we treat what God's given us. That goes into every aspect of our lives. And we're responsible to what we do with it. God has called us to be stewards of His kingdom. And all the things that we possess, He expects from us return. I remember you taught us years ago, if we borrowed something or rented something or got something, we return it back in better shape than we got it. And that's what the Lord desires of us. We have our children. They come to us a certain way, fallen from birth, and we're to return them back to the Lord better than we got them. Our homes, our cars, everything we've got should be better. But he says, I want you to remember this, owners have rights. Owners have rights, but stewards have responsibilities. See, I'm not the owner, I'm the steward. And I have a responsibility as a steward. God's the owner. He owns every aspect of my life. He owns. And I need to realize that stewards have responsibilities. So and this is something that, I've learned through the years. We've all learned stewardship through the years. We've all learned bits and pieces of it. And you children, as you grow up, you have to learn to be good stewards. Like when you're walking out on the church property and there's a piece of trash laying around and you walk past it, that's not good stewardship. Good stewardship would stop, pick it up, walk to the trash can and throw it away. How about this? After you eat a snack after school, multiple times after school I find empty baggies laying all over the playground. Empty Ziploc baggies that the kids had at lunch, empty yogurt boxes, empty applesauce containers. That's not good stewardship. See, good stewardship is going to take care of the things of God, because stewards have responsibilities, and all of us are responsible for God's kingdom on multiple levels. So here, we are called as God's stewards to manage that which belongs to God. While God has graciously entrusted us with the care, development, and enjoyment of everything He owns as His stewards, we are responsible to manage His holdings well, according to His desire and purposes. We're responsible to manage everything we've got well for God. Any questions so far? Because this is going to... I know this seems pretty basic, but we need some basics, I think. I do, so I know it might help us all. So let's go into the men, because this is broken down in two parts. Tonight we're going to talk about the men and pick on the men tonight, and then the Thursday after next we're going to pick on the women a little bit. But I figured I'd pick on the men for a little while, because the men, which encompasses husbands, fathers, and we're going to talk about responsibilities and stewardship. The first one is going to talk about our spiritual things. Spiritual things. It's your responsibility as men, husbands, fathers, to learn how to be good stewards in the following areas that I'm going to break down here for you. Now, I want you to understand, some of us are new at this. Some of us are going to be new at trying to be a good steward of what we've been given. But right there in the red letters, if need be, through counseling. So if you do not know how to do something, there is counseling available. There's men here that know how to do it. There's men here that can help you learn how to do it. We can show you how to do it. Really, I had this in my mind. Brother Andrew shared with me, I guess it's been a couple months ago, that YouTube took the place of the father in the home. And really what that means is that if any of us young men need to do something that our fathers didn't teach us, we can turn to YouTube and have YouTube teach us how to do it, and we watch some stranger on a video somewhere across the world, whether he's godly or ungodly, doesn't matter, but he's teaching us how to do something. And that's okay. I'm not opposed to that. I've learned how to change alternators. I've learned how to do a lot of things that way. But what I want to show you is that these things are lacking. That's why we turn to those things. And then the other thing I'll tell you is Google has taken away the counseling of the ministry. Because if any of us have a question on how to raise our children or a marriage problem, we Google the answer. And we go to whatever site it takes us to. We get our answer. You no longer consult with your ministry. You no longer consult with those around you. You turn to Google. You don't know who's on the other end of that advice, but you take it and you run with it. So the wells in your assembly are going untapped. They're going untapped because you're turning to other sources. Not that that's wrong or bad, but when you got people in this assembly that produce the fruit, you should be talking to them, not turning to some outside sources to get the answers. But that's not what I want to talk about. I'll throw that in there for you for free. So we want to talk about stewardship. So the spiritual things we want to talk about first. Your personal spiritual walk. Reading and praying as you should for you and your family. Stewardship starts here, your spiritual walk. How well are you doing at praying for yourself, praying for your family? How well are you doing at that? Are you being a good steward? Because stewardship, this is part of stewardship. Stewardship just isn't managing your money. Some of us like to think, if I just manage my money okay, I'm a good steward. Well, I'm going to show you that there's a whole lot of things that go into stewardship that are way above and beyond any money you'll ever have. This is one of them, your personal spiritual walk. You must be a good steward of your relationship with God. Kids, you got to be a good steward of that. That means when Mommy and Daddy aren't around and it's time to do devotions, you do your devotions. You be a good steward. You do what's expected of you by God. Not to mention your mom and dad. So, the spiritual things is your personal spiritual walk. As men, if you're married, your wife's spiritual walk. You need to be a good steward of your wife's spiritual walk. Well, how does that look? Well, I only used the example for me and Sister Puckett. Brother Finnegan may have a different one, and Brother Davis, y'all add to this anytime. It's not a one-man show by no means. But your wife's spiritual walk, how do you do that? You talk with your spouse daily about her spiritual walk. You spend time with her. You ask questions. You give encouragements. You give instructions. You give corrections if need be. See, how well are we doing as stewards of our wife's spiritual walk as well? And it's like I said, this is the men's turn tonight. Next week will be the women's turn. But we're the heads of our homes. That's not light. That's biblical. And as the heads of our homes, we're going to be asked to give an account for the spiritual condition of our home. Not just our finances, not just the balance of our checkbook. We're going to be asked to give an answer to the condition of those things that have been put in our possession by God. He's going to ask us about them. We're going to be held accountable for them. And that's important to understand. So this is how you help with your wife's spiritual walk. How about your children's spiritual walk? Because if you have a child, you have a stewardship that's been given to you by God, and that's not a stewardship. None of these are stewardships to be taken lightly. But the same thing with your children's spiritual walk. You talk with your children daily about their spiritual walk. You spend time with them. Sometimes a child that has attention situations is because they need some time. They need some time with their mom, time with their dad. They need some love. You'd be amazed at how much. Yes, sir. As far as, okay, if a child is acting out abnormally, in a, I don't want to say rebellious way, but if they're acting out and they're withdrawing and they're sometimes it's over hyperness. You'll see it pop up in hyperness. You'll see them, and what we would say the world would call attention deficit disorder, where they just won't focus. Sometimes as a parent, if you sit down with them and spend time one-on-one with them, that alleviates that, because what that is sometimes is a call for attention. They're actually sounding the alarm, I need you, I need you, I need you. That's just the way it expresses itself. Attention deficit is real. It's not the way the world defines it, though. I personally believe attention deficit disorder is they're not getting the attention they need from their parents, and there is a deficit, and because of that deficit, it creates a behavioral problem. Does that help? Is that? So you talk with your children daily. Where are they spiritually? How are you doing today, Elijah? Did you do your devotions? How is God dealing with you, if anything? Is there anything troubling your mind? Is there something you want to talk about? Is there something you've seen or heard or done that you want to talk to Daddy about? And you sit down and you talk to your children about their spiritual walk. I think you said you did it regularly with your children.
I think when you're...
Yell at Mike.
It's like at work. This isn't on, so it must be dead.
Go ahead.
Okay. Got this one. It's P. All right.
Take out for questions, brother. You can take out for questions.
You know, just like at work, you know, men know how to work, but sometimes they don't know how to build a spiritual home. they get good at what they do as a profession, but not so good at what they do spiritually at home.
Sir.
A lot of it has to do with not repeating it over and over again like you have to at work. But if you have a problem at work, you have to evaluate this, the symptoms, and then figure out the solution to that problem. The same is true at home. And I think one of the symptoms that you're not doing what you need to do, and that's not a negative, that's not you're a bad boy or you're, because you're not doing what you need to do. It's a fact that, oh, something's wrong here. I must be missing this. And that is, if your children won't talk to you, if they don't have a comfort environment to talk to you about almost anything, it means you haven't talked to them enough. Because your children will be comfortable talking to you if you engage and talk to them. If you don't, they develop these habits of withdrawing and going to the room and being alone. That's the big teenage thing. The kid goes and spends all of his time in the room and he don't engage with his parents. The reason he doesn't is he never did. They just didn't pay attention to it when he was playing with a truck or playing with a ball or whatever. But he never talked to his parents growing up. So, the first thing in developing your children, because I just don't think they're going to listen to you that much if they don't feel like you're willing to talk to them and care and develop a relationship with them.
That's right. Another, to add to that, the way we raise with our children, we all do it differently, but the way we always did it, still do it, is I don't allow my children to go to their room by themselves. Why? If I look through the house, between the dining room and the living room, and I'm missing a kid, I'll holler, "Where are you? Come on out here. Be with everybody else." I don't let them shut the doors either. Don't let them shut themselves in the room by themselves. Because it's building that, like you said, that bond together as a family, and not allowing that seclusion to show them the importance of building together as a family, as a unit. So we're responsible for this. We're responsible for asking questions to them. How are you doing spiritually? Has the Lord dealt with you with anything lately? Have you been convicted about anything? Is there something you need to be forgiven for? And you ask those questions. They're probing questions. And it's not that and if you come down on them, they're going to shut up. They're going to seal themselves from you. They're not going to talk to you. You're trying to draw that out, to nurture that out of them, not squash it. Because they will close up on you and you won't get through to them. But then you encourage them. See, there's accolades. You praise them when they do right. You pour it on them. You build them up. You lift them up. That's being a steward of your children. And then you instruct them. See, one of the greatest detriments to any child is they go without any structure. You just let them go nuts. Well, that's dangerous. See, that's not being a good steward of that child. I'm a steward not just over my checkbook, but over my children. I'm a steward over my personal spiritual walk, my wife's spiritual walk, and my children's spiritual walk. I'm going to be held accountable for these things as a man, as a father. And then correction if need be. Don't fail to correct your children if they need to be corrected. And you correct them out of love, not out of anger. Use the Word of God. Use a rod. Use consistency. Consistency is a great destroyer. Inconsistency is a great destroyer. It destroys.
How do you spank your children?
I personally, I do it the way, of course, the way you did it, the way Denny Kennison does, is that if my child is taken in a fault, there was 3 things that I absolutely spanked my children for. Willful disobedience, lying, and hitting their brother and sister. There was no negotiating out of that. There was no, it was coming down, and that's just what was going to happen. So I would tell them to go to the room. I'd get my Bible. I'd get my paddle. I'd walk into the room with them. I'd sit down quietly. I'd talk in a soft voice, and I'd say, "Do you know why you're in here?" And then I'd get them to tell me if they knew. And if they didn't know, I got a good gauge where they are mentally. See, if they can't tell me, then mentally I know where they are in their mindset. But that doesn't mean I still don't correct the flesh. So we do that process, and then once they tell me or they don't tell me, I tell them how many swats they're going to get. According to the... Brother Puckett was pretty mean. Mine was 10. But I'd start low, because if they threw a fit, I would start counting up. Okay, that's going to be 4 now. It was 3. You won't control yourself. Now it becomes 4. And the longer that goes on, it went to 5. Then we go to 6. And then slowly they level out. Because they realized if they didn't level out, they would get spanking. But before that, I would go through the scriptures. I had a rabbit trail, I call them in my Bible. I had a verse I started at, always started there, and I'd go through them, boom, 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 all the way through the process, and I would tell them what their responsibility is as a child, what God expects of them, what my responsibility is as a father, and what God expects of me. And then I'd handle the discipline. After we handled the discipline, we'd sit down and pray. I'd have them kneel, we'd pray, ask the Lord to forgive them for their sin. And then I say, do you believe Jesus heard you? Yes, sir, I believe Jesus heard you. You believe Jesus forgave you? Yes, sir, I believe Jesus forgave you. Well, guess who else forgives you? And I'd open my arms up, I'd smile at them, and I'd give them a big old hug. I usually set them on my lap. 99% of the time I'd set them on my lap. I'd hold them because I know their pain, they're hurting. And I'd sing, Jesus loves me. The whole time I held them until they stopped crying. And then when they stopped crying, I got up, I hugged them, we walked out the door together. And some of the times, not all the time, but some of the times I did get a thank you. Which was, man, that'll break you down hard. I mean, it'll break you hard. When your kid looks at you and says, thank you, Dad. It's like, oh. But anyway, that's how I did it.
Did you ever get angry?
When I first started, yes, sir. When I first started because it takes spirituality. It takes a place in the Lord to know if you spank your child in anger, I'll give you this. It is a wedge between you and that child. They're not going to take that correction as love. They're going to take that correction as hatred. They're going to take it as a wrath. And they take it with a wrath without... First off, let's do some ingredients. Let's build on a little bit. You haven't spent much time with them. You don't spend much time with them. You don't show them much affection. You don't show them much attention. And when you give them a spanking, it's out of anger, and then it's a shunning after that. Well, you are slowly wedging between you and your child any form of relationship when they get older. It'll be gone. It's... The anger, you have to, and sometimes I will tell you this, sometimes after I'd seen that I would get a little upset with them, the next time I went to spank them, if I felt that inclination inside, I'd have to back up a little bit and wait until I got myself down. Because they'll get you riled up. When they're challenging mom and dad, they'll get you riled up pretty quick. But you had to level down. If you don't level down, it's better. I'll tell you this, and this might sound extreme. If you cannot not spank your child in anger, you best not spank them. That's the way I look at it. Because I think it does that much detrimental damage to that child's spirit.
So, the reason that we get angry, when we spank our children is twofold. One is our own spiritual condition. And the second is we let the offense go too long.
Build up. Yes, sir.
You know, you warn them, you warn them, you warn them, instead of correcting it after the first warning. Oh, yeah. You keep warning them until you lose your cool. And you really have taught your child, first of all, that it's okay to rebel until mom and dad gets angry. Then mom and dad are going to go beat me half to death because they're angry. And you're actually creating a symptom in your home that isn't edifying. Fathers, provoke not your children to wrath. You provoke your child to wrath by taking too long to correct the situation and getting yourself in a tizzy. So it's much better you give them a warning. And again, as Brother Puckett said, not everything is if you spank, I like what ACE said. If you cut a child's hand off for stealing a loaf of bread, what are you going to do if they rob a bank? So you've got to make sure your discipline is equal to the offense. If you're over-disciplining on something that should have been a stand in the corner event or a go to your room event or a chore event or whatever, if you're spanking them for every single one of those events and they're not spankable events, what are you going to do then when they do a real spankable event? How do they differentiate from that? So it does take a lot of wisdom to be a good parent and to develop and raise our children properly. And that's what we're wanting to do. Of course, we were in ACE since I was very young, and I was only 23 or 4 when we started the school. And so I had to learn all this.
Sure.
And it saved, really, it made me a much better parent.
That's right.
Because it saved me from that condition of not knowing what you're supposed. ACE taught me how to discipline my children. And, you know, God bless them because my pastor didn't know.
Yes, sir.
You know, that's the thing. Let's face it, being a parent is kind of an experiment sometimes. And we're hoping that we keep training to where nobody's experimenting anymore.
To add to that, when we spanked our children, it was we had no downtime. What I mean by that, and this is going to sound probably strange to some of you all, but me and Sister Puckett was on the same page. If she's grocery shopping and there's a meritable, spankable event transpire, she left her buggy in the aisle, she took all the kids to the car, and she corrected that child right there. If you wait too long, the child does not know why you're spanking them anymore. It's just a fact. And to tie on to what Brother Philip said, if you're counting, I tell you, there's something that burns me up. I'm telling you, I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2, 2.5, 2 3/4. I'm telling you now, you're programming that child where your stopping point is. And they'll push you to that limit every single chance they get. If it's 3 and they know Daddy means business at 3, they're going to push you all the way to 3. And then they're going to say, oh, I'm sorry. And they'll control you that way. They'll stop at 2 3/4, but they'll push you all the way to that edge. That's why there's no counting. If it's a meritable spanking, it was a meritable spanking. There wasn't no counting. There wasn't no time lapse. It ain't going to be none of this wait until I get you home. No, we're taking care of it now. And that, I meant it. There's many a times you ask my wife, she spent many days leaving that full cart of groceries there, walking to the car with all 3 kids, and taking care of business with the 1 child. Because, again, time is of the essence. Time is of the essence when it comes to those meritable spankings that you have to give. You must not delay. You train that flesh how to dodge you. I promise you. You're going to train it how to duck you. It's like being in a boxing ring with a boxer. They're watching every move you make, and you're training them your next swing. And that's how they do it. So, yes, sir.
So, what you do is you let your child know up front
Yes, sir.
how many whacks it's going to be,
Yes, sir.
what the offense was, biblically your responsibility as a father
Yes, sir.
or mother. You know, really, you're just spanking them in the place of God. God's given you that responsibility. It's really the chastening of the Lord.
That's right.
So you're just being accountable to God. You know, the world doesn't want to be accountable to God. We do want to be accountable to God. So I don't know of any parent that enjoys this process. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't enjoy it. You know, I didn't enjoy it. I'll spank my grandchildren. I'm not afraid to spank my grandchildren. They all know that. So how many whacks, what the offense was, what the biblical solution is. Get the whacks, kneel down with them, and pray the sinner's prayer. I'll tell you what that does, Brother Guerriere. If you take this step every single time you correct your child, you'll teach your child how to repent. You know, repentance is something learned. And if we learn that when we discipline, if the child learns to ask the Lord Jesus Christ to forgive them of their sin, and then once they do, I always looked at my children. I was on my knees at this point, and I looked at my children in the eye and said, do you believe that Jesus has forgiven you? And they'd have tears in their eyes, and they'd say, yes, I believe Jesus has forgiven me. And I would say, just like Brother Puckett, so have I forgiven you. And then we hug. You do that every single time, and what you have done is given your child a soft heart, a repentable heart. And that system works. It does work. And your children, I think after a certain few years of doing it like that, you're not going to have to do it. It'd be rare
I haven't.
Right.
It's been a long time.
Long time.
Elijah always pushes me to the edge, but I think he was the last one to get a spanking. So he was the last one.
Now, he's a boy.
That's right. But he hadn't had one in a while. So,
last night.
Yeah, 15 minutes ago. That's good. So, any questions on that? Yes, ma'am. Sister Finicum. We got a mic. There you go.
I just wanted to ask then, at that point when the spanking is over, is that done? You know, I mean, unless there's something that follows up for what they did, but, you know, when you go back in the other room, is it over? Does a child know it's over?
Yes, ma'am. Whenever we would finish that, it was over. But what we did do, I didn't include this, was if they lied or hit or disobeyed, they had to ask for forgiveness and tell that if they hit their brother or their sister, they had to go, will you please forgive me? That was the next step. After we've asked Jesus, we go and make it right with the individual. But after that, it's over. It's not to be remembered. It's not to say, you remember what you just did last week? We never called it back out again. Because I promise you, it's going to come back up again, and then when you finally handle it, it won't rear its head up anymore. You don't have to recall it back to the floor, because Eddie, if it's still alive and well, it's coming back to the surface again, and you got to be ready, and you got to be. And the other thing is paying attention to your child. Sometimes we got to make sure we don't fall into the trap that they're going to grow out of some of this, because I've watched children through the years, and sometimes they grow into it. Which means they get enough strength of mind to hide from you now. They know that if I rear it, I'm going to get correction. So they start, I call it the chameleon phase. They blend in. They got enough strength of mind now to hide from you. Before, they're just running around, making a mess of everything, and they don't have nothing, a wherewithal to hide that from you, Andrew. But as they get older, they get a strength of mind about them. And if we're not paying attention, they'll go low on us, and we won't see them. Like a crocodile, you get up on it, it lays down to the bottom of the swamp. It's still there, and when all of the tension passes by, it comes back up. And you got to be ready for that, and you got to be a good steward of this. This is, again, I'll tell you, I have not seen a child's personality so great and so strong the Word of God don't have an answer for it. That's not true. That's a lie of the world. That's not the Word of God. We can't buy into that rhetoric that my child's just got a strong will. A strong will, I told you, is a will left to themselves too long. It's a strong will. Any more questions? I thought you said something. Your time. You have to be a good steward of your time. Is it being spent to further your family, both spiritually and naturally? Or is it being wasted on self-appetites? I call this the me time phase. We disengage from our families, we disengage from our children, we disengage from our wives, and here's the answer. I need some me time right now. Listen, Brother Puckett gave up his me time years ago. I don't have any me time anymore. I do not have me time. I found out me time's a waste of time. I found out me time does not benefit my family, nor does it benefit my children spiritually. If anything, it just benefits my carnal man. That's all it benefits. Yes. Microphone. We got one?
What about the time when you have to spend, when it's you and God?
Okay, that's different. This is the self-appetites is what this is qualified as. Self-appetites, me time. That's just a hobby you like to do. That's just you like to get alone and just be yourself, or veg on videos, or veg on a movie, or just sit around like a couch potato. This is the self-appetite at me time. That's what I qualified that with. But when it's just you and the Lord time, that qualifies under your personal spiritual walk. How well are you doing it? You're praying, you're studying. That's where that falls under. But this particular one I'm talking about is the one that you don't know how many men I've heard say those words. I just need some me time right now. Or how about this one? I've had a really rough day at work today. I just want to unplug. Well, let me tell you something. I left Berglund Chevrolet working in the finance office. From the time I drove from my house, from that job to my house, I had to switch hats, and I was no longer plugged into Berglund, but I was plugged into my family, and I was coming in the door plugged in. I wasn't coming unplugged. There's no time. If I've decided to marry, have children, there's no more unplugging time for me. Now, that doesn't mean during my prayer time I don't get alone in a room, I don't go somewhere and I pray between me and the Father. That's it. But just to have some self-absorbed me time, that doesn't exist. Not for spiritual men.
And the secret to the reason that you can do that, and this is very important, men, to learn this. Not that you don't know. We're just in this class. What Brother Puckett has done is learn to make the time with his kids his me time.
Yes, that's right.
Really, it was a transferring of satisfaction. You know, before he might have been satisfied doing his thing or pleasing himself. He's more satisfied today than he ever was with his me time, because he switched his focus on the family and the Lord and even people in the church, and found satisfaction in the switch. And that's the key, really. The key to succeeding at this is the ability to learn how to enjoy. It's kind of like learning how to enjoy, what is that stuff, Sister Davis? Maybe spinach or something, I don't know. Collard greens, yeah. Learning how to enjoy collard greens. You got to develop an appetite for that, don't you? I mean, you know, you got to learn to like that when you're a kid. I didn't. But I have learned how to like time with my children and my grandchildren. I love it to death. And I'd rather be with them than alone any day of the week. I mean, I'm telling you, I'd rather have my grandchildren or my children with me than be by myself.
That's right. This is my life, and this is what I live for. That's where you got to get to. You got to get to this is your life, and this is what you live for. Your family, your children. Like I said, if you took on the responsibility to be married, and you took on the responsibility to have children, you have automatically supposed to forfeit the self-absorbed me time. It now becomes family time. Family time around the dinner table. Family time at home. Going on a camping trip together. Going fishing together. But it's family time. It's time together as a family. So, any more questions on that? Next one. Family finances. First question. As men of your home, you're going to be held accountable as a steward of your family finances. First question you got to ask yourself, are they being managed properly? Are your family finances being managed properly? Do you have a pulse on the checkbook, a pulse on the money coming in, a pulse on the money going out? Do you know where it's going, how it's going, what it's being used for, what it's not being used for? Is it taking wings like a bird and flying away? Is it being put in bags with holes in it? Where is it? As men, we're going to be held accountable to all the money God's ever given us. We're going to be held accountable for it. And we've got to remember that. So you are responsible for your family finances. The second thing under that is, are they being squandered without discussion with your wife? That's tough, because as men, bless God, I don't need to talk to my wife. Well, we're fools if we don't. It is a level of accountability. You can ask her, talk to her, see what she thinks. Most of the time, you're going to say, yeah, that makes sense. But are they being squandered without? Are you as a man just spending the money however you want to spend it, wherever you want to spend it, on whatever you want to spend it on, without including your family? You're going to be a steward over that. You're going to be held accountable for that. I'm going to be held accountable for that. So are they being squandered? The next one. Are they being squandered on hobbies and appetites that are not productive spiritually or naturally? Are they being squandered on hobbies and appetites that are not productive spiritually or naturally? You have to know that. Again, let's go back to the very first principle. The very first principle is the principle of ownership. Who owns that? God. He owns that. Who's got the responsibility to manage it properly? We do. We have the principle of responsibility with that. So, are they being squandered on hobbies, appetites that are not productive spiritually or naturally? That's something you have to examine. That's something you're going to have to be a steward over. The next one. This is the longest one. All right. Are they being squandered through debts? Now, this is very important because we're in a debt-laden society. And these things here, you should write them down. I think they'll help you tremendously. Are they being squandered through debts? You should strive to be out of debt. Freedom from debt allows for freedom spiritually in God and His works. And that's an absolute fact. Freedom from debt gives you freedom spiritually in God and in His work. Debt is a form of bondage which God does not desire for His people. Taking on debt from your home for your family is not something God desires. And we've got some Bible verses we'll go through with that. But as the stewards of our homes, as men in our homes, we have to give an account for the debt we have. Because let me tell you something, debt is just a form of bondage. I am bound to the lender. There's a scripture in there. I will be bound to that lender until that debt's paid off. And I won't have that freedom spiritually. If God was to move me in a direction, I won't be able to. To me, this is part of, so you know, this is part of having my roots too far in the earth and not being a pilgrim and a stranger. You may have to have a home. You ought to live as close to debt-free in that home as we can. You may have to have a mortgage, but it ought to be a mortgage that you can have paid off quickly and not bound to it for any extensive amount of time. All right, it's a form of bondage which God does not desire for His people. Freedom from debt should be our desire. Debt could delay God's plans for the future. And you need to remember that. Whatever debt you go to take on, it could delay God's plans for your future. Brother Ben, if you decide tomorrow you want to take on $200,000 debt and God had a plan to call you somewhere, you better consider it. You've got to weigh God in the picture first. Because and we'll go to a couple of Bible verses on that. Romans 13:8. Owe no man anything, but to love one another. For he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. Owe no man anything. As the stewards of your homes, as fathers of your homes, you're held accountable whether or not you owe man. The next one is Proverbs 22:7. The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is subject or servant to the lender. And how come getting debt-free is such a craze right now? Because there's freedom in that debt-free. There is a level of... Listen, you don't have to make as much money if you don't have that much debt. Don't. Debt drives up your need for money. Debt drives up your need for those things. But the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. You will serve that lender until it's paid off, whatever it is. And then 1 Peter 2:11. Dearly beloved, I beseech you, as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lusts which war against the soul. Part of the reason we go into debt is because of a lust or a fleshly lust. We're supposed to be pilgrims and strangers and abstain from some of those things. Because it's a killer for a home. Debt is one of the number one killers in a marriage. It kills the marriage. It puts the stress and the strain on the home, and it isn't God's desire. So we have to work at getting free from that. Now, I put this on here for a reason. These spiritual things we ought to do and not leave the others, natural things, undone. Because it's just not just about, we're in a natural world and a spiritual world. We have to do both. We are supposed to be stewards of both, not just one world. We're to be stewards of both worlds. God's given us a lot of things in the natural, so we're going to talk about natural things. Number one, if you own a home, you're a steward over the physical condition of your home, exterior and interior. Now, I know we might get into, well, that's what your family brought you up like, that's what our family brought you up like. Principle of ownership, principle of responsibility takes all that away. Who owns it and who responsible for it? God owns it. He made me responsible for it. He gave it to me. So here, this gets pretty detailed, so I'm going to read it off my list because it's hard for me to look up there and see it. And here's the question. Are you just letting things go into chaos because you don't want to do them or you don't know how to do them? Because again, if you don't want to do them, that's a problem that we have to address. If you don't know how to do them, that's a problem we need to address. Because we can, with all the information and knowledge in this room, we can teach just about any of one of us how to do something we don't know how to do. Because you don't know how to do them or you don't want them. It's the responsibility of the man to learn how to do them. It's called leadership, stewardship, and responsibility. It's the responsibility of the man to learn how to do them. It's called being the leader of your home, being the steward of your things, being responsible for what God's given you. And I put this down here. It's not the responsibility of your brothers and sisters in the Lord to come bail you out of your bad stewardship. I put that on there for a reason. We don't want to get caught up in the fact that I'm going to decide if I'm going to be a bad steward all my life and all my years, and then all of a sudden when the time push comes to shove, I need all of you to come and bail me out of my bad stewardship. That's not biblical. That's not biblical. Because we'll learn here in a few minutes how to keep this from happening. This is the reason this happens is we don't want to do them or we don't know how to do them. And we let them go into chaos mode, which means they get unmanageable. You can't manage it without having to have an extensive amount of money or an extensive amount of help to get it in order. Well, that's poor stewardship. And the Lord's going to hold me accountable for that. I remember when I first got my house over there on the... I remember it like it was yesterday. Brother Davis was driving around the block, and I was out in the backyard. Do you remember this? I was on my hands and knees in that backyard pulling dandelions, because I hate dandelions. So I want you to know I overcome at the church property. There's just so many dandelions right here. But I was on my hands and knees pulling dandelions out of my yard. Brother Davis pulled up and he said, so you finally see you're bowing down to your new idol. I was like, are you kidding me? But he was just joking, because he just wanted to rub it in a little bit. But I didn't like the dandelions. But I didn't want my yard to get... If you look out here in the summertime, not that we should go out here and play... Not that we should go out and pull all the dandelions, unless y'all feel like you need to do that. But if you go out here in the summertime, man, this place is full of them. They're taking over. Well, that's kind of like your home. If you don't start taking care of things, it's going to get grown over. It's going to start falling down or rotting away or whatever. We're going to be held stewards of that. And it's not your brothers and sisters' responsibility to come bail you out of bad stewardship. We must be good stewards. That's the physical condition. So let's go down a little bit further. The exterior of your home or any personal property. The exterior of your home or any personal property needs to be kept up, touched up, maintained, and should always be done as needed and not left undone. It's being a good steward. Not left for months and years on end to get to a place of chaos, where it gets to a place where it's unmanageable, and then call on, again, I'll say this again because this has happened. I know this has happened. And then call on your brothers and sisters to come manage your bad stewardship. Well, maybe it is because we don't know how to do it. That's what we're here for. Brother John, if I came to you and I didn't know how to do it, would you show me? You'd show me, wouldn't you? You would. I know you would. If you didn't know how to do some electrical work, I'd show you. I'd come do it for you. But at some point, as stewards, we're responsible to learn how to do these things. So that's the exterior of your home. The next one. The lawn and landscaping around your home or personal property should always be kept trimmed and tidy, not left for days on end to get unmanageable or to enter into chaos mode. Now, I put on here the Amish for a reason. About a year or so ago, me and Sister Puckett went to the Amish land in Ohio. Berlin County, is that it? We went up there. And I'm going to tell you something. It was unbelievable how impeccable their properties, their homes, their land, their fields, their landscaping, everything about them was impeccable, because they understand the law of stewardship. They've been given stewardship over those things. Now, can you get crazy? Can you get chaotic? Absolutely, you can get out of whack on this. But we have to be at least biblically minded to do this. It should always look neat and tidy and upkept. It should look that way. To the point where the city won't let your lawn get out of control, will they? No, they'll slap an orange sticker on your front door and charge you $250 to cut your grass. So they're not even going to let this thing go out of control. So the lawn and landscaping around your home or your personal property should always be kept trimmed and not left for days to enter. The interior of your home. The interior of your home or personal property, the walls should be painted and touched up. And I'll tell you something, my wife did a lot of that when I was working at Berglund. She had a paintbrush and a paint cup and a refrigerator. And when I was at work, if the kids scuffed the wall, she'd touch the wall up. She'd touch the wall up. But the wall should be painted, touched up, things such as your fans, lights, switches, receptacles, toilets, sinks, etc. should be repaired as they break. As they break, not left for months and years undone. We need to learn how to do them. This is called growth. When you learn how to do it, it's called growth. If you never learn how to do it, you never grow in that area. And I know some of us didn't know how to do this growing up. I know we didn't have, maybe not all of us, but I know some people grew up with dads that didn't teach them none of this. Actually, my dad personally didn't teach me much of anything. He taught me a lot of what not to do. He did teach me that. The thing about my dad I remember the most was that they were a bunch of backyard mechanics, him and his brothers. So it was all the time at my house, every night just about, because it was a drinking time. They would have a chain hoist above a tree branch in some 63 or 64 Chevrolet Impala or some 60 or 71 model pickup truck sitting underneath there. And they had pulled the engine up. They have dismantled the engine. They're out there putting new engines in, new carburetors in, a double Hemi carburetor, whatever. They were always doing it, and I watched them. I would sit and watch them. I thought it was fascinating to see that hoist go over that tree branch, and they're sitting there pulling that engine up out of that car. I thought that was pretty impressive. But he never taught me none of those things. Everything that I know pretty much I've learned from you, brethren, or I've learned through the years. I gained the knowledge because I didn't want to not know how to do it if I could do it. I wanted to know. And we'll get into that in a few minutes. Should be repaired as they break, not left for months. We need to learn how to do them. It's called growth. If our jobs require us to do something, here's the interesting thing. If our jobs require us to do something we didn't know, what are we going to do? We're going to learn how to do it. If our job said, hey, we need you to be responsible for this area now. Well, I don't know nothing about that area. What are you going to do? You're going to go learn that area. You're going to learn that area, and you're going to get good at that area. Why? Because you're going to get paid to do it. Well, remember, the first principle is ownership. Who does it belong to? The second principle is responsibility. Who's responsible to keep it well maintained? We are. It belongs to God. So if you didn't know the task, you're going to learn how to do it. The cleanliness of your home. And I know this is a touchy one. The cleanliness of your home or the dwelling of your personal property, it should always be neat and tidy at all times, if not for any other reason than to be ready to entertain God's people unannounced. To be ready for that. To be ready to entertain God's people unannounced. Because I know in our minds, well, as long as the spiritual things are done, well, we can't just do spiritual things and leave the natural things undone, because we are stewards over both worlds. We're stewards over both of those conditions, our spiritual world and our natural world. We're stewards over them. God gave us dominion over them. He told us to be responsible for them. Hey, make sure we take care of them, because He's coming back. And we're going to be held accountable for how well we've done at these things. Any questions? Any inputs? Outputs? Strike-throughs?
One of the things with that is that the less you have, the easier it is. In other words, you can ornate your lawn so much that that's all you have time to do is take care of all the different things you've placed in your lawn that only have value and some people that is a hobby to them. You got to know yourself, and if that's not something that you really want to spend your life doing, trimming a bush or something, then don't put the bush in your house. You don't have to. You just keep your lawn mowed and cleaned and yard raked and things picked up and things like that, so that you can give yourself to other things. Everybody has to choose what they want to give themselves to, because you're going to give yourself to something. So you choose what you want to give yourself to. I choose to go to the mission field and be gone 5 and 6 months out of the year, because that's what I'm called to do. That's what I love to do. So you got to, just like planning for how God's going to use you in the future, you have to plan your home for how God's going to use you. You know, some of you have maybe more rooms, and that's so that you're ready to bring some. When I left the house over here and came to this house, I gave up keeping people in my home. Like, you're not going to keep anybody. I mean, I'm going to keep some grandchildren this week, but you're not going to keep anybody in that little home. That's just not what you can do. So everybody has to choose your poison. What it is you want to spend your time doing. Especially moving toward the Lord. You don't want to maintain a bunch of stuff, don't have a bunch of stuff. Then you don't have to maintain it. Some men will never be auto mechanics. You're going to have to pay somebody to do that. That is part of, you know, your responsibility. You know, we're learning right now, and I'll tell you something that probably most of you don't know. Over $1 billion a year is spent on automobile repair that would have never had to be done if you maintained your automobile at the points you were supposed to do it at. $1 billion a year in expenses on repairing a car because you didn't do your normal maintenance routine. And American car owners are way worse at that. The actual import owners, you know, the actual manufacturer demand it.
Sure.
So the imports, the reason why, what's the theory about imports over, which one's a better product?
Imports,
Yeah.
that's what they say.
But the truth of the matter is, they're really not better products, they're better maintained products. Because the domestics do not stress maintenance like the imports do.
Sure.
And that really, I'll tell you, maintenance is huge. You know, oiling, greasing the grease joints, rotating tires, your maintenance intervals will cause your vehicle to last longer. It'll cause things to be safer, all of those things. But you do got to pick. You know, we Americans are way too busy. We have too much stuff. I mean, everybody has stuff. I bet you found some stuff, didn't you, Brother John, when you moved? Did you find any stuff? You accumulate stuff out of the house, won't you? And it just keeps growing. I don't know where it comes from. It just grows. Well, that's our problem in America. We are stuff gatherers. The fewer toys you limit your children to have, the happier your children will be. I'm telling you right now. That's why I stop buying toys when they get 4. I'm taking them somewhere because they're way happier, even though they do count me into going into the getting a stuffed animal or something. But the truth of the matter is, most of us are dissatisfied because we have too much, not because we have too little. So as you move forward in your stewardship, you got to evaluate, okay, what's important? What am I able to manage? If I'm not able to manage it, that means I got to pay somebody to do it. And you just got to pay somebody to do it if you're not able to manage it. That you know, I agree, Brother Puckett, you can't expect your brother to come over and do it for you unless he has something he can't do and you can, and you can trade. You can trade off skill sets. That's That's a reasonable thing. Maybe you need something written, and Brother Hyatt or Brother Andrew can write it, or actually I think he's a very good writer. Not everybody in here is a good writer. And if you had to write something, you probably would need somebody to help you evaluate that and make sure the spelling is correct and make sure it's written in a proper form or a proper way. You might need somebody to help you do that. You might need an attorney. Hyatt will help you as an attorney. So to me, trading off is one of the ways to do that. If you can trade and barter your skill sets with each other, I look at it this way: if there's something that I don't know how to do and Brother John does, why can't I go volunteer to mow his lawn? Why couldn't I go to his house and mow his lawn and trim his hedges, and him help me do what I need to do, because I can really mow a great lawn and he can really do this other thing good. I think sometimes we don't trade off. We don't say, you know what, you're helping me do this, I want to help you do something. Tell me what it is I can help you do. And Brother John, you can't say, well, you don't need to do nothing, because actually you cheat that person. You know, we got to be we can't be afraid to say, okay, that sounds cool. You come over and you can do this for me, and I'll help you with this. And that way,
Hunter.
That way you're helping.
Oh.
I believe we do that.
We may.
I do. How do you feel about, if I'm a bad steward of that area that I need to barter with? How do you feel about that? I know what Brother Puckett was talking about was, us being bad stewards of an area that...
If a person's unwilling to learn or just lazy, that's a different issue. But if a person has way more expertise in an area than another person does, then that's where we should help one another. But I don't think we should do it,
Because they've dropped the ball.
Correct. We should, as he said, help each other improve, but there's no way that everybody in here is going to be have equal skill sets and everything. That's not going to happen. Nobody does. Because there's things that some people can do in here that a whole lot of people can't do, because they're very, very talented or very gifted at that area, or they do it every single day of their life. So, I can set tile in a floor. Now, I don't do it every day, so I'm not fast, but I can set tile, and you may not be able to set tile. And you may mess your whole tile job up trying to set tile. So, if I come and help you set your tile, you may help me do something. That's what I'm saying is, there's some things that you just aren't going to have time to learn, unless you want to give your life learning it. Not everyone can learn everything. That's just not realistic.
Hunter. Brother Davis.
This can sound like that we don't want to help one another, but that's not really the case. I think if we go to Galatians chapter 6, where it talks about carrying your one another's burden. And if you look at that word there in Galatians, I can't remember the verse. It means excessive burden. We should help one another with one's excessive burden. If you go a little bit further down in the chapter, it says then we should take care of our own burdens. We should carry our own burdens. That word burden there is our own personal, individual burden. It's just like if I needed somebody to come over and help me get a refrigerator into my house, we should help one another do that. But if I call you and say, well, could you come over and help me carry this lamp into my house? I know that sounds silly, but so it's not that we don't want to help one another. And this is not, I just want to bring this out because some people may think that that's what it's about. Plus, if you want to volunteer to go help somebody, then that's wonderful.
That's right.
But what it is we don't want to expect our brothers and sisters to come over and carry our burden, my own personal burden. You see? If somebody wants to volunteer for that, that's fine. But I think it's the expectation that we have of really, because we can get into abusing one another. And I personally don't want to do that to anybody. So I just wanted to bring that out.
Brother Jeremy, or Brother Eddie. Brother Eddie, since you're on that side, go, Brother Jeremy.
So, the difference between stewardship and servanthood, and the charity that comes along with servanthood, what is our responsibility in that? Because as Brother Davis was saying, you know, obviously, I think that if somebody is trying to take advantage of somebody, I think that's their own personal spiritual walk. And yes, obviously, we don't want people to take advantage of us, but where does the servanthood in us that could impact somebody that may have that fault?
Well, the servanthood in us would want to raise them above that condition. See, servanthood just isn't going to go do it for them. See, if I have a child that's weak in an area, I could run to them and do it for them every single time. That's not what greater servant am I if I teach that child how to get through there. I'm still serving them, just in a different form. It just appears to be different. It's still charity. It's still love. I don't know if that, Brother Andrew's got, Brother Jeremy.
I had two different questions. One is, as far as like your home and things like that, how do you, like, the things that are needed to do, you know, you just gave us a little outline.
Yes, sir.
And speaking as somebody new, what if, you know, like when you have the things that are required to do certain things, but those are the things that you are learning yourself in that, even before that, like you don't even have those tools yet.
Right.
And, you know, like speaking on my own behalf, like that's even a little rougher for me because I grew up in it, so I heard it, but I haven't done it. So it's like I'm learning things that I should already know.
Right, and that's just like with our kids, when they're new to something, we're going to jump in beside them, we're going to be right beside you, we're going to work with you.
And then my other thing is with the servitude, not servitude, but stewardship and things of that nature. What if your thing, like for me, I'll be honest, like, and I've said it since I've been here, my thing is I will show up and work until it's done. I don't have special skills. I don't have my knowledges are not in a working form of what we do here, but my ability is I will work until we're, you know, I'll work until we're done. Is that some, you know, now obviously I try, like, you know, when we're working in there, I'm trying to pay attention, I'm trying to learn things, but, you know, a lot of those skills are things that take time.
Oh, absolutely.
A long time. But is that a, you know, and also you, like, we're talking about having to pay someone else to do it, you know, and that's going to cause your finances, whatever. Yeah. Is there an issue with, if a brother knows how to do something and you need it done, not only him coming and you're learning from him, but instead of paying somebody outside of the body that it's not doing any good in the spirit of the Lord, could I not pay him some sort of, because not only is he helping me, teaching me, but I'm in return helping him financially.
Only if he does it for profession.
Yes, sir.
If he, I wouldn't ask Brother John to build me a home for free, because that's what he does for a living. I paid Leah to cut my hair because she was doing it for a profession. Now, she's asked me not to do that many times, but I just like if somebody does something for a profession, like Brother Puckett is selling homes as a real estate agent, I wouldn't ask Brother Puckett to come and sell my home for free, because that's how he makes a living. There's a difference between doing something, and that's how you make a living, versus doing something because your brother needs help.
Right.
I think the key, I didn't know nothing when Brother Welch found me. And the very first day I met Brother Welch, first day, Dan Arisman introduced me. Brother Welch was under a car working on pulling a starter out of the car. And he said, hey, hello, hey, this is Brother Howard, and Brother Howard, this is our pastor, Brother Welch. He came out from one of those little wheeled carts.
Creeper.
He said, well, hello, welcome to the church. Now get under here and help me pull this starter. And that was the first time I ever met him, and that's exactly how it began. And he actually taught me everything that I knew. I think what's lacking in a lot of people is the natural curiosity to learn. There really ought to be a desire to want to learn.
Sure.
There's not much that I don't want to learn how to do. I'm, putting tile, 2 foot by 4 foot tile over there, and that's a big tile over there in Honduras. I like the challenge. It's challenging. It's hard. I'm sweating over there. Number one, it's very hot. But I'm teaching Rico and Edwin both how to lay tile in an American standard bathroom. And they learned a tremendous amount by being with me, how to use certain tools and everything. We had a blast. But they both have a curiosity to want to learn. I think something happened to us growing up that took the natural curiosity out of wanting to learn things. Maybe it was the fact that Dad didn't take the time to teach us, or he didn't make it fun, or whatever the situation was. So I think all of us need to evaluate whether we have that, curiosity to want to learn how to. I just think it's so fun learning how to do something, let alone doing it, just learning it.
That's right.
So if you're helping, let's say Brother Puckett's helping you wire something, and you don't ask how to do it, or you don't ask, why are you doing it that way? I mean, and I'll say this to you kids, it's nothing wrong with asking. Okay, so tell me, why are you doing it? Well, we're remodeling this. Ask questions. Tell me why you're doing it that way. So it gets inside your brain, Brother Luke. When it gets inside your brain, man, something happens inside here. And all of a sudden, this creator awakens inside of you. And this learner awakens inside of you. And you start to get an appetite to learn.
Brother Andrew?
I just want to go back to Brother Eddie's question, because I think there's a point there that we don't always do a good job explaining. And that's that there's 2 different kinds of charity. There is a unidirectional charity, which is the ultimate biblical use of the word, which is, if you crucify me, I'm supposed to have charity for you. It's also irrelevant to me whether you burn after that, but I'm supposed to have charity for you. I'm supposed to forgive you without expecting any development or maturity or growth or any of those things. Expecting nothing in return. There's another kind of charity that isn't supposed to be mutual, that involves a clear expectation that somebody is going to grow and mature and develop and learn. And the easiest example of that is if I have my children in a playground, a public playground with ungodly kids, and one of my kids gets smacked, I'm going to teach them unidirectional charity. You don't smack the child back. You don't hate the child. You may or may not still play next to the child, depending on what the severity is of what's going on, but I'm not going to go involve myself in that issue. If it happens here, and I just let people go around smacking each other, it's not charity anymore.
That's right.
We can call it that if we want to, but it's not charity anymore to just go around letting church kids smack each other. And so when we take that into these other areas that we're talking about, everything that we do here, unless somebody is brand new out of the world, is done with a hope of mutual charity, with a hope that there's going to be mutual growth and development through this process. And so even when I am on the requesting end or the needy end, that request has to be done or should be done charitably. And so one thing that I do, and I'm, because of my work, I'm sensitive to this stuff, but to go to Brother Davis's example, if I'm getting a $50 fridge off of Craigslist, I may ask somebody who has a pickup truck and who has the ability to come help me. If I'm getting a $700 fridge from Best Buy, I can afford to have Best Buy deliver that fridge or to get it in a way that they will deliver it for free. And one of the things I ought to consider, to me, in that situation, if I'm going to request charitably, is what are the consequences if my brother blows out his back lifting this for me? Because I mean, that's what I do for a living. That's my background in it, is I deal with the people who are getting the surgery because of all that. If I can put that on someone who is going to be paid, who is going to have insurance, who is not going to starve, because if I'm saving $30 to ask my brethren to help me with something, I should think through, at least to some degree, what the risk is I'm asking them to undertake. Just like if I'm asking you to come do a receptacle, that's one thing. If I'm asking you to come play with the electrical line that runs behind my house, I'm asking you to take on the risk of death to help me save money. And who's going to deal with the consequences of it if something goes wrong?
Right.
And so anytime I'm going to ask the brethren to help me with, even when it comes to a move, I do think through before I ask it. You know, if Brother John is sitting in front of me and he's been out of work for 6 months and his family's been without income for 6 months because he needed a back surgery because I asked him to come move my furniture, okay, how am I going to play that out? How am I going to help take care of that situation? What steps am I willing to take to show charity then to that family that's in that spot because of me? And that doesn't mean we shouldn't help, we shouldn't take risks, we shouldn't do any of those things. But it does mean there's charity on both sides if we're doing it right. Now, we'll all do one-way charity if we need to, and we'll do it indefinitely if we need to. But that's not the goal here.
That is the uniqueness. It is, I mean, I can tell you, I've gone to churches where they don't help each other at all. The evolution of the church, they pay song leaders, I mean, it's terrible. And, probably if you check those churches in their origin, they probably weren't like that at all. So there's something in our nature that we could evolve to the point of not helping one another. And I think that's what Brother Davis was touching on. It's a perfect harmony is what we're striving for perfection, church. And perfection means, as Brother Puckett is showing, it means stewardship. But perfect stewardship does evaluate what do I want to maintain and what I don't want to maintain. Do I want, if I plant this, or if I put this in here, if I put this fancy drive in, or if I do this, do I really want to take care of that the rest of my life? Because that's what you're asking to do. So you got to count the cost before. I know you've chosen to simplify your home, and I don't know the full reason behind it, but obviously you're a builder. You can build whatever you want, can't you? as complicated as you want to complicate it. You could build whatever you want. And Brother John is a great example of saying, I want this simple but elegant, but it's going to be simple. That's somebody that has the power to do whatever he wants to do, but as a good steward, he's choosing to put it in something that he feels comfortable. I can maintain this. It's not going to cost me my life taking care of this. You can get into that. So the fine-tuned balance is, first of all of us should be desiring to learn more than we know. That's what Brother Puckett is talking about in stewardship. All of us should become responsible for what we own, or own less if you don't want to be. That's a good way to do it. And then as, we all have specific skill sets, then we help one another because charity is never unseemingly. And that means that you don't take advantage of somebody. Now, it also means don't be so proud that you don't get help, right? I mean, isn't that the other side of the coin? I don't need anybody to help me. I can do it all myself. Well, that independence is not a body spirit. Because sometimes you helping me might be the very thing that humbles me down. So it really, what we're asking, really, perfection is a hard thing. You got to have perfect harmony. Training your children properly, I mean, I'm telling you, man, you can't be lazy in training your children properly, because you have to do it every single time the same way. You can't correct her one way and correct your son another way, because he's going to say, what's up with that, Dad? I mean, just because she's a girl, I mean, you're giving her a pass? That doesn't work very well in equality in our homes. So we have to be consistent with everybody. Brother Renee?
And the mic too.
Just about what you was talking about, I was like that before I come to the body. Really, I want to do everything by myself and not on asking for help. One of the things we learn here is to help each other, and I know we're doing good, and one of the things I've observed, and I have a good example. Just not too long ago, I was doing a work, and I take Benjamin with me, and just to be tired of doing the work and boring. It was a hard work, I was grinding the floor. It was all paint, the floor, so I had to grind the concrete. And Benjamin was helping me to water the floor so I don't make a lot of dust. And he was, distracted, and sometimes he just poured water all over me and say, well, like, what are you doing? And I get mad sometimes, and I you need to be, you need to be focused on what you're doing. I know you get bored, and me too, but you need to learn, you need to watch, and he just passed all, all the time. We spent like maybe 4 hours working, and he was there with me all the time. And you complain, just do it right, and just don't try to play it until we get it done. I was more concerned about getting my job done than teaching my child how to do the work. And I feel really sad about it, because I don't make myself to teach him. I make myself to get the job done.
That's right.
And sometimes we have to learn how to help each other to make them or teach them how to do the work. Because for some people it's very easy to accomplish, like a building, build something, work on things like that. Like I was just telling you, then the good thing about America is that they pay you to learn. So I'm not scared to lose my job and go and find another job and start again, because that's what I like. I like learn things and move from one job to another job, and I worked a long time for a guy in it's by Whitville, making $9 an hour, but he was teaching me everything. And there's no money right there, but there's experience. So sometimes we have to pay the price to learn, and then in the future it's gonna be, like now I know I can go anywhere and asking whatever I want to make, because I know how to do the work. But to get there is a cost. And another thing different than what we was talking about, helping. And when I was building the house, I don't ask for help to nobody. And I'm not saying nobody helped me, but whoever want to help shows up. They get there, and or they call me like, hey, I'm going there. I say, okay, because one, I don't have the money to pay. I don't have the way to trade work, because nobody needs work, but then, and it's a good thing to help with one of the things, even the ungodly people, I'm talking about like Hispanic people. If you're doing something for business, they're gonna charge you no matter what. But if you're doing something because of your need, they help you without asking. And I think that's one of the things we got here. We don't expecting something. We just like to help. But like I worked for Brother Hyatt before, and he paid me to do the work. So if I'm losing my days from work and working for one of the people in the church, I feel like it's fair to charge the cost of losing my work, losing the time. I know they probably don't gonna pay the same they pay to a company, and but the main subject I wanna bring it up is we're doing this one because we love each other, and we just wanna help each other, and I know, like I say, we working. Everybody's working very good here. It's not something that we are really don't make the work, but it's just something to bring it up so we can, as a new people, we can see, and I can even observe Brother Evans working in the dining room. The first time he come here, he show up, and he's there, and I'm not. Even me, I lose few days, like from working in the dining room, because another different things, but it's not because I don't want to come here. It's because sometimes, if something come up and you have to get the thing done. But I really think that, like we just have to be focused more and learning the things, because Brother Pocket was helping me to wire the house, the first part of the house, and then after that I just
took it over. You learned how to
do the work. I mean, and it's really good, like when you have somebody to teach you something, you have to observe what they're doing, so you can, and then right now, you can Google everything. So if you want to learn something, just look it up.
To go back real fast, I think we have a skewed view of servanthood to some degree, Because, Brother Eddie, on Cracker Barrel, you have a training process. You train them how to do the job that needs to get done. Is it any less servanthood at the church to want to train everyone here to rise up higher than where they are? We're going to Honduras, and we're bettering their condition. We're teaching them things they don't know. We're helping them rise above where they were when we found them. Well, isn't it just as much a servitude to want to train our brothers and sisters to rise above the condition they're in? And here's the other one of the other things that I want to say to add to this is that I grew up with an alcoholic father who done drugs regularly in my house. I watched my dad smoke pot on the back porch numerous times as a child. I watched them make their drinks, drink their alcohol all my life until I was 10, 11, I say all my life, until I was 10 or 11 years old. I grew up, listen, I went to the projects of my dad while he bought his drugs in the back seat of the car. And when y'all heard the story 15, 20 years later, I mentioned, hey, Dad, how's Nucci doing? He was blown out of his mind. I knew his drug dealer's name. I knew it. No matter what, my dad would get drunk drinking a fifth of alcohol. I don't know if it was called Night Train or whatever that stuff was called. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night because him and my mom was throwing a fit. They were fighting in the bedroom, slinging the beer through the liquor through the hallway, hitting our bedroom floor. That's the way I grew up. I'm not bound to that, though. It's not an excuse for me not to change. And that's something I've seen and I've heard, is my background, the way I grew up, is the reason why I don't change. Well, Jesus Christ was supposed to eradicate all that in my life. He's supposed to bring me up out of that condition, and this is servanthood. What we're talking about, helping our brothers and sisters out of their conditions that maybe they grew up in, is serving them. It is a form of charity. The other thing, well, I'll wait on that. But that's what I'll tell you what. Pastoring. I remember you taught me. You tell me all the time, brother, this is real pastoring. And everything that I've done has been real pastoring. But this right here is real pastoring. What we're doing right now is real pastoring too. Real pastoring just isn't coming to your house and doing something for you. Real pastoring is going to do something for you when you need the help, but it's also going to train you and teach you to come above where you are. That's real pastoring. We're trying to shepherd you into a higher place, and we ought, like Brother Philip said, we ought to desire to want to be better. I mean, like if you had a lady at Cracker Barrel and she didn't want to learn, you're going to keep her on the job. You tried to serve her by training her how to do that job. You were serving that girl with the capacity to raise herself up, or that young man to raise themselves up. So servanthood isn't always doing for you. If you always do for your children the things they have a hard time doing, they're going to be handicapped their entire life. They're never going to be able to grow up fully. They're going to always have a handicap. They're going to always have a weakness. And what we're trying to do is raise each other up in this area. That's what we're trying to do. It's not that we don't enjoy serving each other, because I think we all enjoy serving each other. We will all drop everything on a drop of a hat to come help you with your burden. But what we're talking about is, okay, we're going to do that, but while we're doing it, we're also going to train you up out of a condition at the same exact time. And holding on to the way I grew up is not a justifiable reason to stay the same. It's just not. Because when I came to Jesus Christ, I agreed, my past is my past, and Christ can make me better. And that's what we're here for. That's what these classes are going to be. Because we're going to go through all kinds of things through the years. This will be, I hope, a permanent thing we do, because I think it's healthy for us. It's going to help us grow together. And listen, like you said, we'll be right for you, brother. If there's something you don't know how to do, we're here for you. And I will say this real fast, and I hate to say this, but the new people have been here to help the dining room every day. We've been working in it. I mean, right in there working. And then say something else, and Brother Andrew and I, we're good buddies. We're good brothers in the Lord. But I ain't saying this to get any favor by him. But he's a lawyer. He's a mind. He's very intelligent, if you hadn't picked that up yet. Okay? But it meant a lot to when I saw him with his first set of tools, and he went and got them on his own. I went to his house a couple weeks ago, and I sat down in his living room, and I saw a kitchen table, a picnic table, and benches that he made. I saw a shelf sitting in the living room, a nice decorative piece that he made. I saw shelves hanging up on the walls in his kitchen that he made. And how apt were you to doing those things, Brother Andrew? You weren't, were you? But you did it. You learned. You got in there and you did it. So it doesn't matter how smart I am. That's irrelevant. It's like you said, it's how much where's my curiosity to want to be better than what I am? Where's my curiosity to want to rise above the condition I grew up in? Because that's what we're here for. We're here to help each other on all these areas. And if that means you bought a $50 refrigerator on Craigslist and you need help, I'm there. You need help with your washing machine, Brother Gary? I'm there. I'll be there. But we're here to help each other, like you said, unto perfection. That's where we're going. Anything you want to add or say?
You know, that's what I'm doing in Honduras, training those boys over there to do things way different than everybody's doing it around them. Their skill sets that, it's just fun. But they have a desire. I will tell you, training somebody is a lot easier. Brother Eddie, you can testify to this, when somebody wants to learn. It's a pain in the neck to try to train somebody that doesn't want to learn. And so everybody here can help process. And, remember I told you, young men, that successful ministry is going to teach people practical things in life. That's what success, the practical way to be a real Christian. That's what this is all about. And that's successful ministry does that. It's not just the doctrine of hell and resurrections and eternal judgments. It's the whole Bible of how to live in Christ Jesus, how to live godly in Christ Jesus. But you will make it, and I do believe this, you'll give your children more curiosity if you let them do things with you, like you were talking about. Yes, sometimes you get carried away and you got to get the job done. And I do think that there is a timing with that.
Yes.
Pick jobs that you don't have an immediate time schedule on, and then help your child develop curiosity. Help them ask questions. Stimulate that inside of them that they want to be a learner and want to grow in knowledge and understanding.
Any other questions? Any inputs, outputs, strike-throughs? We good? All right, let's pray. Lord, we thank you, God, for what you're doing. Touch our hearts and our minds, Lord, as we move forward. We know you're with us, dear God. We know you're instructing us and directing us, dear God. Lord, continue to help us do all that we do out of love and charity for one another, dear Heavenly Father, Lord, as we press forward, dear Lord. We just want to do it according to your word, Lord. Touch our minds and our hearts, Lord. We thank you for this time together. And touch us as we travel, Lord. Be with us, Lord, and grant us safety to Honduras. And we praise your holy name. Amen. Hey, listen, anybody that wants to learn anything, we got brethren that can help. We do. Brother Bernays, and that's something about, he wired this house that I showed him. He took over. He wouldn't let me back over there.